Yeah, don't worry about it, John. That's all I needed, really. So I'm good. Thanks.
John,
Hi, John King.
how are you?
Doing well. Hi,
I just got the 100 mil status report from August about, I don't know, half an hour ago when I was eating.
Yeah,
So
I
I just
saw
sent
that.
it to,
Saw that. Yeah.
I just sent it to the people I had emails for, and Jose, I didn't have emails for everybody, and I just sent it just so it would be out there. So if you could send it to the others, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I saw that, and I sent it through the listserv, so it should go to the working group as well as everyone that's on the listserv, so all task force members and alternates.
Thank you.
Dave Vanell will not be with us, or he may or may not be with us tonight. He's on the road.
And John, I'll be with you, but only briefly, because my son and daughter-in-law are with us, and I'll need to join them as soon as they get back from picking up carryout.
Wonderful. Good for you. And did I see Mark Malcolm here?
Yeah, he's on.
Mark, I just realized that I didn't have you listed as a member here, so I don't know how that happened because I remember typing your name in lining them up. I must have eliminated it. So we'll put you in the list of members. Or no, you're here. You're here as a task force member, right? That's the issue. You're here as a task force member, not a working group member.
I'm not a working group member. You're right.
Yeah, that's
But if you want me to be, I'll join.
well. You can always come and we will let you talk. If you'd like to be part of the task force, I have no problem. Working group rather. Do you have a problem with that, Jose?
Let's bring them all in. Yeah, I think
Right.
it's good.
Okay, you're on. You may regret it, Mark.
Did we tell him that the last person to join supplies the pizza the next week?
I didn't tell him that yet, Mark. Welcome. Good to see you.
It's a dangerous thing. I got it.
And Burton's here. I didn't scroll through the whole gallery here. David Gill is here. Mr. Co-Chair. We're going to let you have a run at that sometime.
Oh, that's quite all right. I don't want the power to get to my head.
And Scott Leary's here, I see. And Shane Murphy is here.
Jan's having a couple of signing issues, but she should be getting on shortly, unless she's
Okay.
already on. Oh no, Jan's on. Oh, great.
And pardon my memory or the Shane, you are from where?
I'm on the task force as an alternate.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I'm just here for the sake of being here. So I'm not on this group.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
Hey, thanks, Jose, for getting me on.
I'm happy it worked out. Thank you, Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well.
Oh, that's great.
Let's see.
Hey, John, Lynn is here.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Good to see you. I thought
to
I
see you
said
too.
hi to you because I saw your face. Hey, John Carter. Who else? I think the only person expected to be here that I haven't identified yet is Jennifer. She may be delayed by family obligations because she's got a little one. So why don't we start the preliminary stuff, shall we? So as I say, Dave Vanel is on the road and wasn't sure that he would be able to join us. So we're all here except for David and Jennifer, not yet. Okay. So I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda, which has a lot of stuff, but it's really rather simple.
So moved. This is Burton.
Okay.
This is Burton.
Thank you,
So
Bert.
moved.
Second,
Who was second?
David Gill.
Jan,
David. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
hi.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of November 17th. And basically, those are the draft minutes that I sent out semi-successfully to at least some of you, and hopefully you got the resend with an amendment suggested by Jan Bradshaw. So, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Burton, and I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, thank you, Burton. Second?
This is Gary, and I second that.
Second,
Okay. Anybody? Let's do it this way. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Number 4, discussion of the draft work plan timetable. So you all directed me to take into consideration what we had discussed back on the 17th, and I did, and I tried to submit it to everybody. I'm sorry, I think I finally know how to use listserv. Apparently a couple of times I mistakenly erased part of the listserv address when I was cutting and pasting it, so I apologize for that. But basically, we had talked about having 5 deliverables. The immediate term one was this work plan itself, work plan timetable itself. The near term one is a topic outline, a draft topic outline of transportation issues for discussion by the full task force. The third one was a polished outline of the same. The fourth was an initial draft text of the 2021 comp plan transportation chapter. And the fifth was the proposed final draft of that. And so what I did then to complete the matrix is I assigned deliverable or activity dates. So some things listed here are not deliverables, but activities that we'll be doing. And then our meeting dates and the task force meeting dates. And the only ones that have been, unless you know further, Jose, the last one that's definitely been listed was January 25th, but I followed the normal sequence through February, and the final deliverable as far as we're concerned, I put down tentatively as April the 2nd. And then with the hope that the full task force would approve it on April the 5th. Now, I tried to remember and record the admonitions you gave me about, what's realistic timing on this. So obviously tonight on December 1st, we're having our first discussion on deliverable 2. And then we said we could finish it either on December 19th or January 8th is what I recalled and had noted down. And then the polished outline I set as a target February 5th. That depends on the discussion, the satisfactory quality of the discussion with the full task force on these. And then, and you can read the other tentative completion dates. Obviously, these are retargets, but they're not immovable feasts. So, and any discussion of the work plan with its deliverables, activities, and timetable. Does it make general sense?
I think you did a good job.
Thank you very much, Jan.
Yes, I think you did a good job.
Thank you. And anyone else, or do you want to? Why don't we pause a few minutes and kind of read it over one more time and see what you think? Because better to say no, we need to work on this than to approve something that is meaningless.
Would it help for me to share my screen with the work plan, John, or?
Yes, that would be very helpful.
I put that up right now.
Thank you.
Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you for sharing.
So the near term, that's what we're going to do tonight?
So that is what we're doing right now, Jan. So if we approve the work plan timetable, we will have completed deliverable number 1, the immediate term. Yes.
Okay.
So this was the first product Walter had asked us to come up with. And I'll tell you that I've discussed it with him. He was okay with it. At least in my conversation with him, Jose, unless you know some later concerns he has, because he understood that other things will be happening concurrently with this. So the task force will not be waiting for us. They'll be in parallel doing other tasks.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, yeah, the task force has other topics. So transportation doesn't necessarily need to come back. The working group doesn't have to come back tomorrow or the next meeting, to provide an update. But I guess just making sure that with those aligning when the working group wants to come back to the whole task force to present stuff, that's something that we can work together on, John.
Right, and those are listed in the third column. I'm sorry, in the fourth and final column. That's when the task force would be taking up our various deliverables. That's what's proposed.
John, this is Burton. I'm just having some trouble remembering what all the deliverable numbers are. If you wouldn't mind covering those.
Sure. So the first deliverable is this very work plan timetable, okay? And then number 2, which I call the near-term deliverable, is an initial topic outline of the transportation issues to serve as a basis for discussion by the full task force. You'll remember that when Walter agreed to setting up this group, he said, we don't want people starting to write a chapter until the task force has had a
sorry to butt in. This is Burton again. I'm sorry to butt in. I just see now that I thought that this document, the draft work plan and timetable, when it was talking about deliverable numbers, that those were referred to elsewhere, but I see that they're described in the same document.
Exactly. Exactly.
I move that we approve this draft work plan and timetable.
Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Lynn.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Anyone opposed?
Hey, John,
can we have discussion?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Yes. By all means.
So I am fine with the text of the plan, but my concern is if we are going to get the full task force's kind of approval on the topics that we'll address on 2/22, that by 3/2 we would have a draft, or 3/8 maybe, we would have the draft text done. That it just seems like a short time frame unless we're planning on having multiple sessions, because I think writing the text is probably the longest piece of the puzzle.
Right.
I totally agree. Here's my thinking, Jennifer, is that not only will the whole task force be working in parallel on other things, we ourselves will be working parallel on deliverables, so that like we can take part of, based on our discussions of the topic out, the deliverables in 2 and 3, we can actually begin writing text. Does that make sense?
Before the task force approves the topics?
Yes, that's my. So I think after the discussion of after the task force discussion of number 2, we'll have an idea, and we can start writing bits just as we did with the principles. We started writing the principles in bits and then put them together and then massage them again. So that was my thinking. It may not make sense to you or to other members, but my thinking is that we will be doing things in parallel ourselves.
Right. On the print, I think the difference with the principles is we didn't go back to the task force and ask necessarily for their approval on what they think what topics they think should be covered. We just kept kind of writing them,
right,
and tweaking them ourselves. So if the group agrees that we can write before the task force approves what we're writing, then we would technically have from 1/19 to 3/8, and that seems like a more reasonable time frame.
Okay, but
that is fine with me, what Jennifer just said. But could you talk a little bit more about number 2, and are we going to do that tonight and
yes,
at the next meeting? Is that the idea?
That's the idea. Yep, that's the idea. And I don't know whether any of you saw, I apologize for its lateness, but you get an idea when you get it, not before. I thought of a little matrix to kind of did everybody get my email just before? We'll throw it on the screen here. Jose will throw it on the screen. But a way that we can structure our discussion tonight onto without over structuring it. So, but this will be an iterative process. things will occur to us when they occur to us, and things will occur to the task force in their meetings to discuss this outline of issues. Does that make sense, Gary?
Hey, John, it's Mark Looney. In looking at the document you sent out just before 6:30, and then looking at that in the context of item number 2 here on the schedule, I wonder if perhaps we ought to think about the timing aspect of it after we kind of identify the topics to be discussed, debated, analyzed, and resolved, simply because it's one thing to say we're going to take the text in the current comprehensive plan and rework it. It's another thing to evaluate the impacts of putting things on and off of the plan, putting things on or taking things off of the plan, changing configurations of what future network connections look like, widenings, not widenings, bridge crossings, not bridge crossings. And that type of analysis is going to take way longer than, kind of January to March to do, which obviously then affects what you write. And so if the objective of all of this is to sort of change the narrative in the plan and the text without necessarily changing I'll call it the network that is in the comprehensive plan and the objectives that network is set to resolve, perhaps this schedule and this timeline works. I just don't know if we start pulling stuff off and putting stuff into the plan or into the network analysis, whether that analysis can in fact be done and completed within this time frame.
Okay.
Which then delays the rest of the work product.
Makes absolute sense, Mark. So maybe what we need to do is have a note here that these are targets, but they're tentative targets, especially from work plan 3, or at least from work plan 4 to the end. So note that it's tentative.
I think that makes sense, John. And, to Mark's point, I do think that there were some items that were discussed in the comprehensive plan task force that, I, for one, felt that we had reached resolution, and I think that we need to proceed with some of those items. And I'm sure John Carter felt the same way, and that pertains specifically to the conceptual grid of streets discussion.
So if we consider some of this is presently unknowable, as both Jennifer and Mark have pointed out. And so if we simply put a simple note, this is a tentative plan of targeted completion dates, and it becomes especially tentative from item 3 or at least item 4 through 5. Is that an acceptable note which would allow us to agree to this as a target plan?
I'm fine with. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Okay. I just think we can't set an end date for when we're going to finish it until we know what we're analyzing.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I would agree with that as well.
Okay. So with that direction to me to add a note that this is tentative date of target completions, and it is especially tentative from item 3 or at least item 4 through 5. Does that make it acceptable to everybody?
Well, isn't it also relating to 2 as well? I mean, we don't know where we're going to get to on 2 until we kind of get there.
Well, 2 is in our power. So 2 is in our power because I believe that. So we've allowed ourselves up to 3 meetings to complete number 2, which is the first rough outline of issues. And I think we can do it, and it's in our power. So we do that as a task force. We don't do that. That is a product that we finish and then give to the task force for their discussion of its adequacy, its what might be missing, what is superfluous, and so forth. Does that make sense?
Okay, John.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the only question I have to that, John, Mark Malkin, is some of those issues revolve around not really process, but it is an element of process as well as planning that involve other organizations, particularly since it's FCDOT is primary to transportation, but VDOT owns these streets, and there's an interrelationship between transportation and land use that you identified at the very beginning, but they're intertwined, and that is, we haven't really explored those issues that weren't in the earlier version of the comprehensive plan, well laid out, that drive timelines.
Very wise point. So we would need to point that out, that coordination with other agencies who have responsibility would affect this schedule too. Is that a fair summary of your point, Mark?
Very much so.
Okay. So with all those very good clarifications, we have a motion and a second to approve the work plan timetable. So I'll call it for a vote. Anybody opposed? Okay, I'll take that as unanimous. Thank you. So let me just finish making a note here. Okay, so number 5. So here we begin our work plan number 2, which is a topic outline of transportation connectivity issues. For tonight, it's only a discussion item. So I've noted under 5B various concerns that folks had about things. Root causes where possible, and it may be impossible to identify them, as Mark has pointed out in the previous meeting. So at this point, I'd like to ask Jose to throw up the little matrix I sent out just at 6:30.
Oh, you sent one out at 6:30.
Yep. And I apologize. It occurred to me late as a way to organize the way we think about this. So what I call it is an initial issue storage matrix. So the rows are the same headings that are in John Carter's consolidated text of the transportation parts of the 2014-15 plan. So there's the community, the first big part is the community-wide transportation issues. The second big part is the transit station area issues. And then, and this is somewhat arbitrary that I only have 3 other columns. One is principles, 2 are general subject areas, and 3 are particular problems. And you see me, I have log there, and I say that because folks who are aware of our work as a task force have begun sending me particular problems. One example would be the code from nowhere, for example. That's a very particular problem. And I'm going to try to keep a log of those particular problems because A, we want to honor the concerns of those who bring them to our attention. And secondly, because those particular problems may make us think in new ways about both the principles and the general subject areas. And by general subject areas, I mean kind of what's under the headings. So how we, for example, how we think about pedestrian mobility, or how we think about bicycle facilities, and what, so kind of general subject areas under those headings. Again, it was arbitrary that I put down 4 columns, or 3 working columns, but you get the idea that we're working at different layers. Does that make sense? And in our own discussion, people will bring up things from all those layers. Now, as I looked over the text again under principles, there are no principle sections. However, there are clearly principles articulated throughout. And so a question would be, would it be a beneficial thing in talking about transportation to articulate certain principles, like I know, connectivity to metro stations, like the, what is it, Project Zero, where we, one of the principles is to strive for a transportation connectivity mobility system that has 0 pedestrian deaths. So there could be many principles. So it's just, I tend to think in matrices. We can use, this can guide us, or we can say, nah, John, it's really not that helpful.
John, can I bring up a point? In the principal document, we have transportation in a couple of spots there. You're talking about kind of a subdivision of that in these principles that you have labeled in this matrix?
Exactly. So would it be good in the final text, in the 2021 comprehensive plan, in the transportation section, to articulate principles for transportation, mobility, connectivity?
We did that in the original principles document. When we agreed to the for the task force,
right,
that transportation items in there.
You're absolutely right, Gary, and this would be articulating more specific principles under those principles. That's it. But whether we do it or not, this I just wanted to say that as we try to initially store the issues as we work toward the outline that we're going to bring to the task force, this is kind of how I think of different storage bins.
John, this is Bill. Let me ask a question. It's an interesting list to which there are things I could add, like, are we talking about development in transit-oriented areas? Are we talking about development in the PRC? And sort of where are we talking about it? What are the circumstances of the particular locations? This is incredibly important. I don't see it on here. But I also am just sort of puzzled as to kind of what do we do with it? Just pick anything randomly, so I don't know, say land use transportation balance. What does that mean? I know what it means at the 87,000 foot level, but what is it we mean here? Pedestrian mobility and bicycle facilities. Are we going to rewrite all the pathways that were adopted in prior iterations? Are we going to say more than they're really important, we should have them? I'm just not sure quite what to do with the lists.
John, if I can jump in, this is Jose.
Please.
You know, what I'm thinking that these headings are what John Carter said with the consolidated text is how the comp plan is currently organized. So in the transportation community wide section, so there's the heading of transportation, and then right below that is a subheading called land use transportation. I can show the comp plan. Actually, maybe that helps if I actually show the actual text of the comp plan. I think that's how John Mooney wanted to do this, if I'm not mistaken, right?
So reading it piece by piece, is that it? I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
So my idea, Bill, is that in our discussion, people don't have to follow that. Those are the storage bins. I'm saying let's set up storage bins. And when Bill Penniman comes up with issues that he's very concerned about, or Lynn comes up with things that she's very concerned about, we'll put it in proper bins so that we're already from the start beginning to put order what otherwise would be just a blur of issues. And as we do this, we may take the current headings of the 2014-15 comp plan, which John has put down here. Some of them may be adequate. There may be missing parts. There may be parts we can combine. So, am I confusing? Helping.
I would like to mention on the when we were talking about bicycles, we could easily get information on how the bicycles are being used now, because everyone has to buy them and clock in and clock out. We should be able to obtain that information. Somebody is obviously monitoring those. And the other thing is that I wish we could plan something for the road to nowhere, transportation via bikes or something else. But I hate to see just demolishing that when we have part of a road that could go somewhere. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Burton.
Yes, Burton.
I just want to comment on Jan's comment by saying that it would be interesting to see the statistics on the bike share usage, but of course, most of the bikes in Reston are not bike share bikes. And so it's not a simple thing to contact a single company and request statistics on bike usage.
Well, and the other thing on it is those are investments in long-term changes in behavior. And so the fact that they may be underused now doesn't mean they won't be used in the future if the framework of pathways is appropriately designed. So
that's a good point.
Also, the other thing is that electric bikes are going to be coming in. And so us older folks who may not want to be bicycling up steep hills might be perfectly happy in the future. And there are going to be a lot of changes.
Okay.
I've got some suggestions. John, can you hear me?
I can.
I think you need another column and maybe delete one column. The general subject areas, the column on the left, the subject areas.
Right.
So do you really need that column? And then I would suggest that adding a column, which would be potential solutions.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying get rid of general subject areas?
Yes, because that's the left side. That is the subject areas, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of specific. That's not the word. It's issues within the general subject area.
Oh, it could be.
So general issues within the general subject areas.
I would definitely add another column, which would get into the potential solutions.
Gotcha.
John and John, would
Yes.
it be helpful if the general subject areas column was renamed as
Reston.
I don't know,
Broad issues.
subtopics. Yeah, I think it's meant to break down from the headings any subtopics that are should be handled within those headings.
Yeah, probably so.
Could we call it subheading issues or something like that? Subheadings to relate it to the heading column. I see what you're saying, Jose. I agree that is poorly named. The general subject areas is poorly named. We'll work on something. We'll hammer that out.
Now I'm going to suggest another idea, which is a little more difficult. I would suggest perhaps a different organization and try this out. A simpler, I like the ideas of these different buckets that we can talk about, but one of the first things to go for is, are we going to have 2 transportation sections or 1? I would suggest we try for 1. I think the existing report, there's repetition, like the bikeways and the maps and the text is just repeated in the 2 sections. So whether it'll work or not, I'm not sure, but I think we should try for 1 transportation chapter.
I thought, John, I thought the same thing. If this leads to repetition, we ought to merge these into 1 and try it that way.
You might have to, as you move through it, the sub-subject areas, we might have to divide the topics into subject areas, which if it's different between the 2 sections. But I would, going into this, maybe try for combining it. The transportation section now is like pushing 20 pages, which is an awful large amount. Now, the next thing I'm going to suggest is a consolidation of these. And here's what I would suggest. See what you think. And I think I've captured them all. One would be the introduction or vision. That would be the first. The next one would be titled facilities. And under facilities, there'd be roads, bikeways, trails, and sidewalks. Number 3 would be the grid of streets and the corrections that we're going to make that. And we know there are at least 3 of those that we're looking for. Number 3 would be transit. And it could be the bus network. I don't know if we have much to say about Metro, but maybe. 4 would be transportation management. That's, are we going to use level of service? Or are we going to use other methods? Another would be the parking attitude in terms of management. And 5 would be placemaking aspect. So that's what I would suggest for major topics there. And I think you could fold these under those 5 items, and it might allow us to move along a little quicker. So I don't know if you want to think about that for a while and then come back, or what you think of that. I think my topics will lead to the solutions a little quicker, I think. But it's a way of organizing topics by the kinds of things we're going to discuss.
If I could offer a vote of confidence for the methodology that John Carter proposed, I would like to wholeheartedly agree with that approach.
I agree, and I think it makes more sense so that we don't have that repetition throughout the document. But John, can you do me a quick favor and just repeat, under facilities, you had some subheadings, and I didn't write those
roads
down fast enough.
Roads.
Uh-huh.
And well, I can even go sub, but let's just stick with
let's just start with 1.
Roads, bikeways, trails, sidewalks.
Yeah, I think that covers it. Okay, I wanted to make sure that the trails and sidewalks was there, and it is. Thank you.
And I think you could take those topics, combining with the ones that you have on this list in front of us, and I think it will fit. If there's something left off, we'll just add it.
Okay.
So
Relative,
one thought,
John,
one thought on
Malcolm, relative to the facilities, the last thing that you listed was place something.
Placemaking.
Placemaking.
Yes.
Which is how, could you talk to that just a little bit more, what you mean? Because how these facilities function is how to create the better use of green spaces or public facilities, whatever they may be, was the first idea I had, but I wanted to be clear what you meant.
Placemaking, in the end, it's about what, now that we've listed all the facilities and we're proud of the new grid of the streets, does anybody really want to use them? So that's what placemaking is all about. What would make people want to use these things? And it's probably more about streetlights and trees and sidewalks. Are they ample? The bikeways. It's one thing to put a bikeway on a map. It's another thing to create a bikeway that someone actually wants to use. So that's what the placemaking. And placemaking has a lot to do with effectiveness of the transportation. It's not always in transportation plans, but I think given the way some of them are turning out in Reston today, I hate to be critical, we need a placemaking feature that would work better than what we have today.
Very certainly. The reason I asked that question was a little bit of relationship to what the board had approved with the December 2018 document that added to the interrelationship of land use around transportation facilities. That's the reason I asked that question. But it's more directly, as you said, people want to get from point A to point B. How do you get them to not use motorized transportation?
Right.
Comes into the placemaking principles that go into that. Thank you.
Yes. And we might not be able to do much more than principles in the placemaking topic, but I think it would be a good start and something that we should focus on in Reston, particularly, I think.
To build off of what John Carter is saying, one of the things in my mind that would be helpful is ensuring that we don't reinvent the wheel unnecessarily on some of these topics. And by that, I mean, the current comprehensive plan language includes a whole bunch of what I assume John Mooney includes in here as principles, which are what are the basic premises of what should be provided in all of these various topic areas, right? So you're expected to provide bicycle facilities both on road and parking. You're expected to provide pedestrian connectivity and mobility, and there are minimum dimension sidewalks and other sorts of things associated with that. To me, a way to ensure that we don't reinvent the wheel, even if we, at the end of the day, still rearrange all of the information that's in the current comprehensive plan to make it consolidated and more easily digestible and whatever, we want to do with it. At the end of the day, it's really a comparison of what's in the plan now versus what we want the plan to say. And so in all of these topics, if task force members or staff or whomever's best able to do this can go through in each of these topic areas and kind of summarize, or we can go through it together page by page, but summarize what does the plan currently expect on all of these topic areas. Do we like it? Do we dislike it? How would we change it if we dislike it? And what do we think is a better solution? And then once we've got that, we can rearrange it however we want in drafting the information. What I'm concerned about is if we just go down this blank list and start throwing out innumerable ideas of what we think each of these topic areas should include without comparing it to the current comprehensive plan, we're going to find ourselves in Alice in Wonderland, diving down into all sorts of holes, only to find that maybe we shouldn't have done that to begin with.
This is Burton. I like the suggestion from Mr. Carter and supported by others to combine the transit station area topics with the community-wide topics. As far as principles, my understanding of principles is more about establishing a good understanding of the trade-offs between different types of transportation, and not so much an understanding of what current standards of building practices should be. And I think that as a working group, it would be maybe necessary for us to have a shared appreciation of trade-offs, advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons of different transportation options and the facilities that go with that. As far as the listing of facilities, I would suggest that perhaps car parking and bike parking and even things such as water should be included as part of a discussion about facilities. Because if you're expecting people to walk or bike, they need a place to park. They might need some water along the way. And the facilities that are provided for car parking, there's a trade-off there on walking and biking. So it's not just the while people are in motion, but it's where do they stop and how do they stop?
Burton, when you talked about water fountains, do you mean drinking fountains or decorative water fountains?
Yes, I meant drinking fountains, but maybe water fountains would fit under the placemaking topic.
I was thinking that Mark had a good point there that he was making, and I don't know how you do that exactly. Maybe it's another column. I hate to add a column, but maybe before that as we move through these items, whichever order we select or whatever the topics are, we should have the discipline to look at what the comp plan says today and then make sure we have a touchstone with it as we move along. I think Mark's point was a good one, that perhaps we ought to start with the comp plan and then go whatever we're going to go, but keep that discipline together. I don't know whether that's another column or whether you just have that discipline as we're going through the topics, but I think that's a good point. I wasn't sure that last comment about the bike parking and the other parking. I think we could add that to the list easily. We need to be careful about the detail and whether which things belong in a comp plan and which belong in the design guidelines or somewhere else. But I think we could add things like that easily.
I have a question. Sorry, John, if I could be recognized by the chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I don't know if we are considering the impacts that COVID is having on the way that we do things and the impacts that it may have on the transportation systems. But I'm wondering if what John Carter and Mark Looney are talking about, adding that additional column may provide us with the flexibility that we need to make those changes based on any of the market trends that we're seeing coming out of this year. I hear about what's happening in Manhattan where people are buying cars like crazy, and so I'm just thinking forward and how can we be as nimble as possible in adapting this plan to any market changes or environmental changes that we see going on around us.
So it's kind of being aware of the COVID land use transportation chain.
I would agree with what Lynn says there, John.
Yes.
If I could, I think that's really important, but also back to John Carter and Mark Looney, I think going back to the original plan also helps us move along and have something to work from and not just, drift out and not, get to where we're trying to get to.
Okay.
This is Burton, and I do like structure, and I appreciate that modeling our discussion on the current comp plan is helpful in achieving that.
Thank you.
John, Mr. Chairman, if I could just pipe in very quickly, I appreciate the discussion and where it's going right now. I would appreciate if we end up with a red line type version of the current comprehensive plan, because I'm getting the crap beat out of me for not having a red line version of ZMod. So, so being able to work from something like that would, I think it might work for everybody if that's possible.
I think that's a very reasonable request, Walter, and we will aim to do that. Obviously, there could be major restructuring, which would make the redlining at a certain point ugly, downright ugly and undecipherable. But I think it's a good idea to do that.
Lawyers,
yeah, thank you, John.
Lawyers love it that way, John.
Keep in mind on the redlining that once you do your redlining, your document is lost when it comes to composing it. So if redlining is fine, but you need to have two documents going forward. One is without the red line, which has just the facts, and the other is the existing document red line. But make sure you have it. Otherwise, you end up retyping the whole document again. We'd rather not do that. That's just a technical issue. But yeah, I think the redlining is a good idea.
I think we all understand. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to add to John Carter's comment on redlining. If John has the idea that we're going to do a lot of rearranging to combine sections, and everything turns red, and that's probably not helpful.
That's why the document is important.
I think we understand Walter's point. He wants to know what we're changing from what exists.
Yes.
And whether we do that by redlining or in some other graphic way, I think it's a good point.
So let's just do it.
Okay. So this has been extraordinarily helpful about how we're going to try to organize what we're doing. What I had hoped to do, and before we close this, are there any other ideas? I'll try to write all this up, and you'll tell me if I got it right or wrong. But if we've done enough of this for now, because I think this is not the last time we will restart.
Right.
But what I'd like to do now is to do more, not talk about structure so much as substantive issues that you're concerned about and feel is not dealt with adequately or not dealt with at all in the 2014-15 plan. Does that make sense? So in a way, starting to get some concrete instances to fill out whatever our matrix is. Are there burning issues? So I know Lynn will say, the road to nowhere or from nowhere. I keep getting it wrong. It's changed its name. But anyway, so that's an instance, or I've gotten expressions of concern about the interchange between the tollway and let's see, it's the tollway in Sunrise Valley, the interchange there and its effect on the polo fields. Did I get that right, Mark? Malcolm? Anyway, so those are particular things. those are particular things. Or people might say we should change the sequence. We should change the sequence. This came up. This came up in another group that I'm involved in, the Reston Transportation Service District Advisory Board. Our last meeting, Robert Gowdy brought up something that we should accelerate the completion of the Reston Town Center underpass. So, you know, that would be an idea, because it's mentioned in the comprehensive plan. So those are ideas. Those are concrete ideas. Would it be worthwhile to start developing that list of concrete ideas that you know you're concerned about?
If you like, John, I'd like to take a crack at this.
Okay.
So, using my outline, so the vision or the introduction. So you've already mentioned this, it's the balance of transportation and land use. What kind of balance you're looking for? The difference between the neighborhoods and the TSAs. And then I put some of the COVID comments perhaps would go into that. But just to move along to facilities. So number one would be the roads. So we have 3 crossings of the Dulles. I don't know of very many road improvements that we would be suggesting, but the problem is getting across the toll road. And so we have 3 toll road crossings now, and maybe we'd want to prioritize those. I'm not sure where we go with that. Maybe we keep all 3. And then the other is, the existing plan doesn't even talk about this, which is the widening of Sunset Hills. Is it supposed to be 4 lanes, or is it supposed to be 6 lanes, or some other combination? Bikeways. So there's a quite extensive bikeway system in the comp plan now. The places where I see it's deficient is bikeways to get across the Tullis Toll Road, particularly the bridges. So we don't have a mechanism to get across the bridges, particularly Wheelie Avenue and Reston Parkway. And then the cycle track along Sunrise Valley, which I think is, to date, very unfortunate. I'm not opposed to the cycle track. I just think it needs better design along the way. Trails. Reston has a pretty extensive trail system. I don't know if we want to get into the neighborhoods and propose something else, but again, just like the bikeways, the trails, you should be able to get from north to south a little bit better than we are now. I'm not sure what the solutions to that, but it probably starts at these bridges, both existing and plans. And then sidewalks. I think Michelle Kimmel brought up this, and I sort of took notes, and I still remember it, that when she's walking her young children, the darn sidewalks are too close to the curb, and it's dangerous for people. And we ought to get those sidewalks in a better location. I don't know if there's other sidewalks that we could propose. Then the car parking on street. I think COVID is producing a need for curbside pickup and drop off. And so we might want to face up to that. I don't know about bike parking. 3, the grid of streets. I think there are 3 changes.
What is number 8 again, John?
These were all facilities. It was car parking and then maybe bike parking. I'm not sure. That may be too detailed.
Okay.
Then the grid of streets. There are 3 changes we need. One is the road from nowhere. We need to get rid of that finally and quit talking about it. 2, there's a road crossing of the Fairfax, Lake Fairfax Park. It's too steep, not even possible to get it. That should go. And then the North Town Center, we probably want a different system of streets for the North Town Center. There may be others, but there are changes like that, which are probably easy to define, and we could move through those quickly. Transportation, the bus transit, the transit. There is a bus network starting. I don't know how far we can go through this. This is how you connect the neighborhoods to the Metro Transit stops. Whether we can get into something like that, whether there's one already done. I know that the transportation planners have been working on this. There might be something that could be done. And our road network in Reston is very conducive to getting a pretty robust bus system to travel through the neighborhoods and get to the transit center. That would be wonderful if we could do that. I'm not sure whether we can or not. My next one is transportation. Yes?
I think RIBS already does that.
It does, but it's not in the plan, and I've never even seen it on a drawing, the RIBS bus system, but there is a Metro bus system also.
It works very well for people who are not as fortunate as some others, and they like the bus.
Well,
and they get RIBS for to the sound center and the shopping and back.
We are very lucky to have that, but as the new metro stations, Town Center and Herndon Monroe open, there'll probably be a redo of the local transit system. I'm not sure how far we can go with this, but there might be something already done or close to done. Next one is transportation management. These are tougher for a group like ours to tackle. So this has to do with it. We're going to use level of service, or we're going to use another method. If we use level of service, is it different in the transit station areas as opposed to the neighborhood? But transportation management is a factor in the transportation system.
John, if I could pause here for a moment. You said this would be hard for a group like us.
Yes.
Let me remind everybody that we do have some transportation professionals supporting.
Yeah, that's good.
So we have John King. Tonight we have Mike Garcia, both from Fairfax County DOT. And we also have a transportation engineer, Scott Leary, and a transportation planner. I sent you their resumes, Nigel Astle, both from MTAC, and they're willing to pitch in and help us think about these things in technical ways that we could not begin to do on our own.
That would be very good. I think we could make some headway here. And I think once we get those transportation maps that shows how our intersections are operating, that it's going to bring lots of thoughts forward. Then the last one, I think, was placemaking. And I would put some of the COVID comments under placemaking, but that has to do with the trees and the lights and with the sidewalks and the way this, how desirable is it? And again, I see some of the things that are going on in Reston now compared to other areas in Fairfax, and I think we need to do better. And I think this would be a good place to capture some of those thoughts. So that's my thought on the whole thing. I hope that was useful.
So a petition for mercy here. I tried to take notes. Could you send me?
I would be glad to.
Send me a list. And
yes.
I would say that to anyone who speaks on these issues in the task force meetings. Please send me written lists of your issues so that I'm sure to capture them all accurately. Okay?
Yes.
I also took notes, but I was wondering if we can just whiteboard it on the screen as we go through. That way we're capturing it in one document instead of emailing 10 different documents to John.
How would we do
Jennifer, that? I was thinking about that, Jennifer. The only problem with that is that whiteboarding takes a lot of time, you know?
Well, I did it in a Word document as John was talking. So I think that if we get the basic stuff up there and then we share a document, like in Google Drive, then people can add their additional comments or pieces that we're missing.
Is it possible to put that Word document up on the screen?
I don't know, Jose, do I have presenter rights?
I'm happy to share those rights with you right now.
Yeah, Jennifer, that I realized that I couldn't both chair the meeting and do that, so I had despaired. But if you are able to do that, that would be a great gift to the whole group's work.
If you could put it up, then I could talk it through to get it matching my outline, and we could probably do this pretty quickly.
I think this is great collaboration.
We can see your Word doc. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay,
So-
the first topic was introduction. Can I type into it? No.
I'm wondering, John, whether we need to do that. If Jennifer shares this and you share your written thing, we'll get it right, rather than go over it again.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
When you got to bikeways, that's when I was like, okay, you got to be typing this, Jennifer. So that's why I missed the first little bit there. But I remember in the beginning, you talked about the introduction, and then we had 3 major thoroughfares.
The facilities were next.
Okay, that's what it was.
I think we can do this quickly, but and then under facilities, the roads was 1, bikeways, trails, sidewalks.
But did you go over 3 major roads that she mentioned there where you're
Yeah,
concerned about?
maybe that's what it was. It was the 3 major roads.
But
Concerned about getting across the toll road.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not sure.
I don't know that we need to do this.
I think your outline is pretty good, Jennifer. If everybody will agree, then I can take it and put the topics in there. I think you've got most of them.
And then you'll resend to me, John?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey,
Can you send me that, Jennifer?
Yep, I can send it.
Okay.
And Jennifer, do you mind?
I can keep typing if you want to go to the next person and their stuff.
That would be wonderful. And you're willing to do this service for the
Yes,
next folks too?
absolutely.
Thank you so
Sure.
much. Wonderful. Okay. So we have John's initial comments. Anyone else want to go through his or her list?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Scott Leary. I would just like to point out that your grid of streets and your placemaking are actually coincidental subjects. They're not separate.
What's that?
Placemaking, grid of streets has everything to do with placemaking, and placemaking has everything to do with a proper grid of streets. And I just wanted to point out that they should not be assumed or dealt with completely separately, because they are absolutely coincidental.
Okay.
I guess I don't understand that. If you could explain that further. I thought they were separate.
Certainly. When we're involved with placemaking is not just the trees and the sidewalk furniture and the welcomeability.
Right.
Placemaking is how you lay out, and it goes to planning, not necessarily engineering, but it's how you lay out an area. And your grid of streets determines your traffic distribution, and that goes to placemaking. And for example, if you have a development that leads into nothing but cul-de-sacs with a single ingress egress point to the state highway system, you've not done placemaking, and you don't have a grid of streets. Whereas if you have a true grid of streets, you've designated certain streets to be the backside of business. Therefore, they're the ones with the loading docks, and they're the ones with the other, in quote, industrial points. But it goes to placemaking because you've moved all of that off of the other streets, and usually it's 1 to every 4, 1 to every 5, depending on how you lay out your system. But it also means that you have a more dispersed traffic distribution. You don't have a single point of entry, single point of exit. You actually have a series of places, and rather than having 200 cars using 1 point, you have 200 cars using 5 points, so 40 cars per point. And that is why placemaking and the grid of streets go hand in hand.
Okay. So you can't consider one without the other. Thanks, Scott.
If I could just add, I'm sorry, but I'm a bit confused by Mr. Leary's description, because when I look at the grid of streets and try to make a parallel or a connection with placemaking, that assumes that the grid of streets is functional. Yeah. And as we have pointed out, right now, the grid of streets is not functional. So I don't see that connection with placemaking as the grid of streets exists today. I think that there will be a connection after we make the corrections that are needed that we've identified. So I just want to bring that to the fore.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Just to address Lynn, I'm looking forward. I'm not looking at what exists. And therefore, going forward, the two really need to be considered coincidentally.
I agree with that. Thank you.
This is Burton, and I don't disagree with Mr. Leary, but I would say that pedestrian mobility and bicycle facilities are also very much related to a grid of streets. Just because, as you know, the experience of being a pedestrian or a bicyclist in a corridor where there's only one major road and you have to be on that road is very different than the experience of being able to, you know, divert, you know, just at a moment's notice, just choose to go a different way, choose a lower traffic route, choose a quieter route, find other destinations, access more destinations. So it's, to me, a grid of streets has a lot to do with pedestrian and bicycling also.
What the grid of streets was meant in the outline is there are 3 drawings in the existing comp plan. My notion is that we would change those 3 drawings. Not there wouldn't still be 3 drawings, but we would remove or add streets to those 3 drawings, which is the actual, and what some are talking about, the grid of streets as the whole, a macro view of the transportation and the circulation, the way it works. The grid of streets is a different thing. Jennifer, I'm going to suggest something. Maybe you could do this quickly. Introduction is number 1. Facilities is 2. I think this will help. That's why I think we should do it. I think you're going to have to type it in because the outline format won't work in Word. So just type in 1. Yeah, facilities is 2. Then roads, bikeways, trails, sidewalks are under that. Grid of streets is 3. Yeah, it would be 2B. Might not have to do that if you just do the chapter head, the headings. For
So is that good? And then you want these underneath.
I think there were 6. I think there were.
Let me look at my original list because that I handwrote.
I have the section facilities is 2. You've got all the
Transportation management. We don't have one here. No, we have transportation. Transit or transportation management?
Management. It's transportation management, not transportation.
No. I had 11.
And then transit, I had a separate 2.
Yes, that's
okay. So that's the one I'm missing. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll fix the outline while you guys are talking.
And I think you'll find that this is a pretty standard format for almost any transportation plan for any comp plan document. I think, except placemaking is a little different. Is that better, folks?
I'm not sure what's meant by bikeways. I know about bike lanes, and I know about trails that are used by bikes, and I know that bikes can be on roads, but I don't know what's meant by bikeways.
Well, the bikeways, there's a bikeway plan in the existing comp plan. In fact, it's repeated. And so this is your bikeway system. And
so it's like the comprehensive network of how bikes get around. Is that about right?
Right. And we'll probably be adding, not rewriting all of that, although we might combine it, would be my guess.
Okay, you guys can keep talking. I'm just going to format.
Okay.
So is there someone else that has things they want to add to this list?
I'll just say, going back to John Mooney's comment from our other meeting that John and I were in, that looking at the town center underpass, the possibility of moving that along, that may be very difficult, but that would be one thing. The other is thinking about COVID, like Lynn talked about, kind of has to be in everything we do here, because people are going to not only change how they move about, but also where the resources are coming to do some of the things we're talking about here. And, you know, that's going to be impacted significantly by what's happened here to budgets and investment, et cetera. So those are my two things, along with make sure there's parking. We don't end up with another Reston Town Center fiasco with the parking kind of thing. So thank you.
Please. So where's parking? I need to add parking and, oh, here it is. Parking's here. You want to add parking under sidewalks?
Sure.
Well, it probably ought to be DE. It probably ought to be E.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah.
So one thought that I have as I look at the grid of streets conversation, and having served on the last go round of this analysis, I understand completely the thought process behind the elimination of the road to nowhere and the road crossing of the creek that runs out of Lake Fairfax Park. My operating assumption without more knowledge is that the modeling done by county staff and their consultant in I'll call it between 2010 and 2014 on the grid of streets generally assumed that those two facilities would be provided and therefore accept some volume of traffic either off of Sunset Hills Road or some other connection, and that by eliminating those two connections, we're effectively redirecting some portion of the traffic back down onto Sunset Hills Road. And so I'm not advocating that we don't make the moves that we're suggesting here, but I think we ought to at least investigate what the impacts are to the network in whole of removing those two connections, and whether any other improvements should take their place as a way to properly disperse the traffic in those road sections.
I think that's a good point, Mark, and we ought to ask them. I would suggest that from the road from nowhere, that was added way at the end after the network analysis has already been done. But let's ask the transportation people.
And that may be true, John, and you may be 100% right with it, and it may not have any effect at all. I just know that these things all fit together, and we ought to do it intelligently as opposed to emotionally.
Yeah. I also think on the grid of streets, I didn't want to get into this, but we probably ought to have a little more flexibility written into those grid of streets. Some of them are the kinds of streets that you're talking about, Mark, that really are essential to the network. And some of them were later thoughts, seemingly what was a good idea, and that maybe we ought to have some flexibility in the review process. I think it's been difficult to work on this, particularly the road from nowhere, because it's in the plan and it was considered as hard and fast and you must have it. I'm not sure that's the case in all of these. So maybe some more
Yeah.
flexibility in how that's written would be appropriate. But again,
Yeah,
let's ask the staff. Let's
Yeah,
ask.
I agree 100% because I always describe these as Sharpies on the page, and they're not really more than that. And
Some
you
of
know,
them probably are, but I think
some
a
of
lot
them,
are not.
right? Exactly, I agree.
Anybody else want to go with his or her concerns, transportation concerns?
Well, I'll just comment on the grid of streets and the road from nowhere, and the traffic in that general area. This is Burton again. As a bicyclist and pedestrian, on the north side of the toll road, I might like to get to Plaza America from the metro station, but it's no fun walking along Sunset Hills Road or biking along Sunset Hills Road.
Yes.
And if you want to bike along the W&OD, that's great, but it doesn't provide any access to useful destinations that are just south of Sunset Hills Road and right next to the toll road. So I think it would be really nice to have whatever grid of streets we end up with, just make it easier to connect from the metro station to all those little cul-de-sac and over through to the Plaza America and Oracle building without having to walk along Sunset Hills Road.
That's a good point.
Thank you, Burton.
For what it's worth, there are some other connections that are contemplated. Your point's very well taken. And so that's why, sort of comparing what the current grid of streets is to maybe what we would propose is a good way to try to address that.
Anybody else want to articulate any concerns tonight? I will mention.
Add something under roads. So it'd be 2, which is the widening of Sunrise Valley.
Okay. And I have one, and I'm not sure whether to put it under trails or not, but besides the north-south connections, how can we look at connecting the trail systems to the sidewalk system?
Yes, good.
Which one to put it under, but I'll put it here.
Yeah. I think you're seeing this outline is working reasonably well. So we're adding things, and it seems to make sense.
Okay. I'll mention 2 of my own. One is very broad, and I've had this conversation, John King and Mike Garcia, and with Tom Bashadny and with Jeff Herman a number of times in the past, and that is, I continue to be concerned that the assumed, quote, trip reduction is too optimistic, and therefore the traffic problems we might be facing would be more severe. So
that's under transportation management.
Yes. So that's kind of a baseline concern. It's a fundamental concern, and I've been through the details with Jeff and with Tom a number of times, and don't want to go into them now. They're mentioned briefly in the little piece that I sent out on my analysis of the Reston Network Analysis final report. And the second point that I'm going to mention also has to do with my reflections on that report, and that is that the modeling, and you've heard me say it before, but I'll just, so I don't need to go into details because I've said it here a couple of times, that no modeling has been done. Monitoring is being done in preparation for a hoped for modeling, but no modeling has been done on the impact of non-TSA intersections of the additional traffic generated from the new TSA development densities. And so Tom very patiently and carefully listened to the concerns articulated by me and by MTAC, and has a proposal to do a study that would model it. But I consider that very important.
That might be even in the introduction.
Any other comments on there will be other chances, dear hearts. So this is not your last chance. But is there anyone who wants to add anything tonight from her or his private list of transportation concerns? Okay, if not, let's move to agenda number 6, which is easy because the proposed agenda for our next meeting, and we said it would be sometime before December 14th, and I think well, no, let's see. No, it is, that's wrong. No. Let's see. That's, I don't know why I wrote that. So in number 6, it says agenda for next meeting, scratch the before December 14th. What is this? This is confused. So what we want to do, we don't want to approve. So for number 6, our next meeting will focus on continuing our work on work product number 2, okay? And moving into number 7, our action assignments to each other before that next meeting, which was on December 15th, is to each of us come up with her or his list of transportation concerns, which we will put into this matrix that we've begun tonight. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any hesitations about that, or is that true agreement?
So I have a question, and I guess this is for Walter or Jose, about can I take this document and put it on a Google Drive for this group and use it as a working document until we're ready to share it with the task force, or do I need to send it via the list?
I think it would be easier for I think just sending it through the listserv. I mean, if you wanted to send it to me, if you're having issues emailing it out through the listserv, I think if I can easily just put a draft watermark saying that it's a working document, and share it around, just letting the I guess the task force as a whole understand where you guys are at, and they may have some questions or in that
Okay.
regards. I think that would be
Sure.
helpful.
Yeah, I don't have a problem sharing it with that with the group, and I can, John, you can do that because you're the head of the task force, this subgroup. But in between meetings, am I allowed to share it on a Google Drive with this task force so that they can make their own edits as they think of them? Is that allowed in a public?
Yeah,
Jennifer,
it's a great idea. Let us talk about it.
Okay.
Got to make sure the county attorney doesn't freak out.
Okay, that would be helpful to know, because emailing a document to that everyone edits, it becomes 100 different emails and
Yeah,
I'm trying
it,
to do that.
I get it. It'd be so much more straightforward to just do a Google Doc.
Yeah. There are many layers to this, Jennifer.
Yes.
One is I'm all for people adding to the wonderful list you've begun, but some people who put ideas onto that list may not like them being edited out of the list. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if everyone has full access to modify the list, let's
Right,
say
so I can set up track changes on it before I put it in something like Google Drive, and then that way, when we come back to the meeting next time, everyone in this group can see the changes, and we can decide if we agree that each of them should remain on the list or be removed.
Great idea.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think just coming from my perspective, using Google Drive for academic purposes in the theoretical world, when you're sharing group documents, Google Drive and Microsoft Office do not like to work with each other, so you may lose some of those track changes. For a collaborative process, which this working document is, I would highly suggest probably sending it through Word. I agree in a perfect world using a Google Drive would be helpful, but you may lose some of those track changes. And I think just for trying to be transparent on who has the pen, it would be helpful. I don't know. Like I said, I'm happy to look into it and talk with the county attorneys. I know John Mooney, we've discussed having a web-based repository for a lot of the documents that he has shared through the listserv as well. So
right.
I hope I can have an answer to all these questions sooner than later.
Okay, yeah, and I'm happy to also make sure that tonight's list and whatever ends up on Google Drive, or if we are allowed to use it, that there is some way so that it will show the exact changes between this meeting and next meeting, if we're end up being allowed to do that, because I can just do a compare or a diff between the two.
Okay, so Jose, if you would be in contact with Jennifer on that specific point, and you and I will continue to work on the broader question of a repository for our working group documents. Jan, you wanted to say something.
Just that I would prefer it being in Word. That way other people can, it's just something that everybody can use. Google Docs will get me into my work stuff, and that's not going to mingle well.
This is Burton. I do not have Microsoft Word installed on my computer, but I can access Google Docs. It's free. I think a good compromise would be to temporarily share this working document of the working group for like a week or two on Google Docs, and then once we're fairly satisfied with it, then send it out to the serve for all the task force members to see.
Well, the way that it's been, the way that John Mooney has been sending them out, hasn't everyone gotten them?
Yeah, so I've gotten them, but I can't edit them and get them all back to you without getting, a million people. So if you guys are not comfortable with Google Drive, I'm happy to use something else like Dropbox, or I'm happy to have you guys email me and I'll add it to Google Drive if you can't use it. Word.
I think you're muted, Jennifer.
I can send it out. Yeah, I can send it out via Word, but you make an edit. You have to send it back via email, and it becomes a 100 email string. And I think that's what we're trying to do.
Let's try Google then. I'm up to trying something new.
Okay.
I would suggest we're complicating this unnecessarily, that we shouldn't do any edit. Just bring your comments to the next meeting. It's not such a complicated document. And so therefore the edits are done by all in front of everybody rather than having separate documents that are edited this way and that way. I think that's too complicated. Just send out what you have and bring your comments but be organized and bring your comments to the next meeting. I think that's simpler and avoids this editing from multiple sources. And it gets us in the discipline of doing this in front of us all at the same time. And I think that's a better discipline than doing this individually. But those are my thoughts about this. Just make it simple.
I like simple.
So,
So then, John Carter, I'm not sending it to you to make edits between now and the next meeting.
That would be all right. That would be all right. I think it's pretty good now. I can think of other things I would add, but I would bring that to the next meeting.
Okay.
If you could send it out to people
Yes.
through lipserv.
Yes.
I think that's
So we have a copy at least.
That's a very good idea, Jan.
Yes.
So that before the next meeting, which again is December 15th, Jose, if you would please set us up for that meeting.
I'll do it first thing tomorrow morning. Yeah, I'll send a WebEx and all that stuff.
Great. But if everybody would send her or his list of transportation concerns ahead of them through listserv, we can all look at them and it forces each of us to the discipline of writing it out, and then it allows the rest of us the opportunity to look at it ahead of time and see similarities or contrasts with our own thoughts. That makes sense. So we'll do that through listserv. So under number 7, that's the action assignment. Everybody, each of us is to come up with, send out her or his list of transportation issues by listserv. Okay? Make sense?
And I guess the second part of that is look at the outline and see if there are additions or subtractions, but just bring those. Don't try to edit the document.
Right. So Jennifer will listserv us all the base document that we've been developing this evening, and then each of us will listserv to the whole team and to everybody on our listserv, including the other task force members, her or his list of urgent transportation issues. And if you have some suggested ideas about their root causes, about options, include that.
John, this is Jose again, and maybe if it's helpful, I know a couple task force meetings, I know it probably seems like forever. FCDOT came back to the task force to have a listening session after their presentation to talk about some of the concerns, and they provided a couple responses. I'm happy to circulate that document again as well. So, you know, I guess trying to be productive with the next task force meeting, I know that each working group member will bring their other concerns, but so we don't have to, we can also add that to this document that Jennifer's working on as well, because we don't want to redo the work. I think we can have an effective meeting for the next one as well by incorporating that stuff.
That would be wonderful to integrate Fairfax County DOT staff comments rather. Let me just make a note here. And then, okay. So I think I'm satisfied with number 7. Gary?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I would suggest people take a look at the document I sent, before the meeting that I got from the county, because it has a lot of very good information on all the transportation projects in Hunter Mill, and obviously includes all the Ruston ones. So it's a very good source checking things. Good report by them.
Yeah, Fairfax County DOT does very helpful updates on that for our advisory board that Gary and I are on. So that is a very helpful document to review, and it shows the status or the projection of the various transportation facility improvements meant to make TSA Ruston more navigable. Okay, if we're done with 7, any other additional business for tonight? Okay.
John?
Yes.
Sorry, it's Lynn. I just want to thank you again for taking the bull by the horns on this, and you're doing a fabulous job. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a bit messy, but probably unavoidably messy. We'll try to have orderly messiness.
Well, I appreciate it also. It's a lot of work.
It is.
You step up to the plate.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, John, and thanks to everybody in the subgroup. I feel a lot better after Jennifer put the document up there and started writing on it, and we could see it and it gets recorded. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Walter, and thanks for your support throughout this. Okay, if there's no additional business, a motion to adjourn is in order and gratefully received.
I so move.
Okay. So we got let's do Jan and Lynn here. Okay. Anyone opposed? Shame on you if you are opposed. Okay. We're adjourned for the evening. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jose, for doing it all tonight.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank
you.
Bye now.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks.